Mega Man X5 is what I'd consider the beginning of the end for the X series. Not to say the later games don't have their moments, but X5 is where the quality begins to dip. It's the point of no return, the game that straddles the threshold between great and pure garbage. Kenji Inafune, who had a significant role in the X Games series, had become increasingly more hands-off as the series progressed. And with this game, his only real involvement was telling the team to, quote, finish off the story. Incidentally, Capcom would later continue the series without Kenji's say, which meant that X5 would create a lot of story beats that would later be retconned into plot holes. But we'll get into that later. For now, X5 was going to be the last game in the series, and so it needed to have an appropriately epic and conclusive story, a high note to go out on. Real quick, just wanted to remind you all, if you haven't checked out my Rise of Mega Man X video, go check it out. I cover X1 through 4. I also have a Patreon if you want to support the channel and my creative efforts. Okay, back to the video. Sigma, you know, that old rascal with his eternal life and his phallic head. Well, he's finally decided to crank his evil plans up to the max. He's spread his virus form all over the world, even infecting the space colony Eurasia as it's set to crash into Earth within 16 hours. This isn't terribly different than in X4 when he was going to use the giant space laser to destroy Earth, but this time it feels different somehow. For the first time in the series, there's a real sense of urgency to save the Earth from a tangible threat. The Maverick Hunters come up with a plan: blow up Eurasia using this big-ass cannon, with 4 Maverick bosses holding key components needed to bring the cannon up to its full power. I really like this decision to tie the obligatory Maverick bosses into the main storyline. It makes them feel like defeating them actually matters. Supporting X and Zero are brand new teammates, presumably that they've been working with between X4 and now, but the game never formally introduces them or gives them any sort of backstory. Kinda late in the series for that sort of thing, but alright.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
First there's new Commander Cygnus. Illustrator Haruki Setsugu joked that he went overboard with Cygnus's design, realizing too late that there would be a scene where he needs to be sitting, and he had no idea how that would work with his outfit. When I first played this, I was certain that Cygnus was going to be the real bad guy, or Sigma in disguise. I mean, come on, Cygnus, Sigma, why would they do that? But sadly, there's no plot twists or really anything significantly interesting about his character. Then there's Douglas the mechanic. Setsugo explained that Douglas was designed with a round nose so that he wouldn't be more handsome than the main characters. I guess round noses are considered ugly in Japan, I don't know. Then there's Aaliyah, the operator, whose job is to provide intel to X and Zero during their mission. Finally, a freaking chick in the Maverick Hunters. This place has been a sausage party for far too long. Fun fact, the concept of a female operator originally started during X1's development, but never got used. At first, you'll only have access to the first 4 Maverick bosses. This might seem weirdly limiting, since we're used to 8, but there's good reason for it, which we'll get into later. The gameplay is largely the same as the previous X games, with a few notable changes. Injured Reploids now litter all the stages, and by rescuing them, the player will get a health refill and an extra life. Just think of the POWs from the Metal Slug series, basically.
Thank you.
I'd say this is a nice addition, and while the later games completely botched this feature, its original form in X5 is pretty harmless. One interesting choice the game made was to include the upgraded armor from the previous games. You could choose to equip it or not, and doing so basically serves as an unofficial easy mode. Another feature, if you could call it that, is Aaliyah offering advice to help navigate you through your missions. She'll offer all sorts of useful advice like, did you know that you could open a door? Unfortunately, the drawback here is that she interrupts the fast-paced gameplay constantly with her very slow text boxes, and there's no way to turn it off. Also unique to X5 are these little Sigma virus heads that fly towards the player throughout the game. If they hit you as X, you'll gradually lose health. However, if you're Zero, it will make you invincible. Story-wise, this is a nice touch. Zero was originally evil, so infecting him with the Sigma virus brings him closer to his original evil but more powerful self. and it hurts X because X was always designed to be a pure boy.
I don't want to fight.
How long must this war go on?
Gameplay-wise, it's a humongous pain in the ass. There's no way of avoiding these little f***s, and there's no hint or indication when they'll appear. The game also doesn't ever explain what their purpose is, and yet the gameplay is being paused so Aaliyah can tell me how to open a door? While X4 has gotten a lot of flack for its English dub,
What do you think you're doing?
It's not too late. Stop the coup now!
X5's localization would also live in infamy due to how its Mavericks names were translated into English. Basically, all the Maverick bosses had their names changed to be puns based on the members of the band Guns N' Roses. So, Crescent Grizzly became Grizzly Slash, named after Slash, that one's a given. Tidal Whale became Duff McWhalen after Duff McKagan. Volt Kraken became Squid Adler after Steven Adler. Shining Firefly became Izzy Glow after Izzy Stradlin. Dark Necrobat became Dark Dizzy after Dizzy Reed. Spiral Pegasus became The Skyver after Michael Monroe. And Burn Diner Rex became Matrex after Matt Sorum. Not sure if I understand the puns on those last two, but then again, I don't really know that much about Guns N' Roses. Spike Rose Red became Axl the Red after Axl Rose, which, I mean, he's a flower robot. You could have just literally kept it Axl Rose and it would have been perfect. So, who's responsible for this absolutely bizarre localization choice? Well, the girl from the big comfy couch.
With Lunette and Molly, a clown and her dolly on a big comfy couch.
I'm not kidding. You remember that kid show about clowns that would be on TV at like 5 in the morning? Well, that's Allison Court, and she would go on to voice Jubilee in the 90s X-Men series and Claire Redfield in Resident Evil. It's through her work with Capcom that she met her then-husband, Eric Suzuki, who worked on the English localization for X5. According to Court, her husband asked her to name the Mavericks, and because she knew he was a Guns N' Roses fan, she named the bosses accordingly. What a weird f***ing world, huh? And since we're talking about Mega Man and Guns N' Roses, Neon Tiger's stage music from X3 is a genuine ripoff of the Guns N' Roses song My Michelle. I'd love to play them side by side, but, you know, YouTube monetization and all that. So, what about the stages? The opening stage is short and boring, and it's by far the worst opening stage of any of the X games. It climaxes with a fight against this weirdly 3D rendered Sigma head who keeps spamming these bullshit unavoidable plasma attacks, and I just hate it. Volt Kraken's stage is reminiscent of Jet Stingray's stage, as it's another jet ski level. It's also reminiscent of some bull Kaizo Mario level where you're immediately dropped into a hole and die. Fortunately, the Rookie mode on the Legacy Collection fixed this by slowing the stage down, allowing you to actually react on time like a normal human being. The other stages range from being a lot of fun to being cheap as hell. There's a pretty wide spectrum on this one. The pre-boss fight conversations could be pretty interesting, and adds a lot more depth to the Mavericks. Like in Volt Kraken's convo, we learn that he and Launch Octopus were close, and he holds a grudge towards X for killing him.
Can you help me out with her?
Oh, really? We're both
Sea creatures.
so we must know each other.
Launch Octopus? Volt Kraken? Dynamo is this game's optional boss you could fight between levels, but rather than finding him in one of the stages, he comes to you. But he's also mandatory, which kinda takes the fun out of it. The first time you fight, his moves are fair and predictable, but the second time, he adds on this energy tower attack that damages half the screen, and there's literally no indication of which half it'll be, so you just have to get lucky. This is probably my biggest complaint about the game. Some of the enemy attacks are just patently unfair. If I didn't have a fair shot at countering or avoiding an attack, then what fun is it? Conversely, some of the bosses are so easy it's absurd. Like this Batman who just flies around in a straight line and occasionally tosses a bat at you. I beat him in like 10 seconds. What a joke. A cool touch is that some of the Mavericks have a Sigma icon under their health bar, and some don't, indicating their allegiances. X5's instruction manual says that Dark Necrobat was specifically created by Sigma, rather than being a Reploid that went Maverick. Thus, he gets Sigma's icon during his boss battle. An interesting tidbit you wouldn't know without reading the manual. Mega Man X5's soundtrack is pretty good, probably one of the better in the series, in my opinion at least. Here's a couple of my favorite tracks. X's special weapons include the C-Shot, the Gel Shaver, the Tri-Thunder, the F-Laser, the Dark Hold, the Wing Spiral, the Ground Fire, and the Spike Ball. Special shout out to the charged version of the Dark Hold, which freezes time, that's a new one, and charged version of the F-Laser, which shoots out a massive anime energy beam that makes you feel like a Super Saiyan. Zero pretty much has all of his same moves from X4, which is kind of disappointing. One new addition, though, is the Twin Dream, which I swear is a special move and not an adult film. It creates a duplicate of Zero that hovers a little off-center, allowing you to attack enemies from a safe distance. This is the first game to not include an animation and a demonstration for a newly acquired attack. You just have to guess what you got, which makes no sense design-wise to discard that info. If I had to guess, I'd say this decision was to rein in the budget for the game. X4 were undersold, and so this game had less of a budget to work with. You could definitely notice a cheaper feel here, especially with the lack of anime cutscenes that were used in the previous game. So, I think the lack of a cool animation or display for the sub-weapons may have just been a sacrifice for a lesser budget. This time around, there's 2 sets of armor, meaning there's twice as many Dr. Light capsules. You could collect parts needed for the Falcon armor, which prioritizes jumping and agility, and then there's the Gay armor, which prioritizes defense. I forgot to mention it during the Mega Man X4 video, but there's a hidden ultimate armor for X and a black armor for Zero as well. In order to unlock Black Zero, you first need to unlock an item called Street Cred. I'm kidding. You can actually unlock either of these armors by inputting a code on the title screen. These armors can be unlocked in Mega Man X5 and X6 in a similar manner. Back to the story, the first 4 Mavericks will each give you a part needed to build up the cannon. With each part you acquire, the probability of a successful shot rises. There's actually a running statistic shown here that tells you how likely you are to succeed. However, even if you collect all the parts and fire, you're still likely to not hit your target, which leads to the second half of the game and the remaining 4 Mavericks. Plan B is to launch a shuttle into the colony and blow it up via suicide mission, like so much Bruce Willis in Armageddon.
I don't wanna close my eyes. I don't wanna fall.
Like before, parts for the shuttle can be attained by fighting the remaining Mavericks. Once they're defeated, you'll have about a 75% chance of success, which is as good as it's gonna get. Apparently, the timer actually does count down in real time, which I barely noticed because 16 hours is way more time than you'll ever need to play and beat this game. The decision to make X5 play out by chance was a weird one, because technically, you could fire the cannon with no parts, destroy Eurasia, and jump straight to the end of the game in about 10 minutes. It's not likely, but imagine how much of a buzzkill it'd be to be done with the entire game that fast. Or conversely, fighting all 8 Maverick stages and then still missing with the shuttle. Well, this is where the alternate endings come in. There's 3 endings to the game, 2 with X and 1 with Zero. If you fail to blow up Eurasia, you'll get the bad X ending. The colony crashes into Earth, killing millions. This also causes Zero to become infected with the virus, and it turns him evil. The series had hinted in the past that Zero was created by Dr. Wily and was originally a very bad boy, before transferring his evilness to Sigma. Well, now that he's fully reinfected with the virus, his true nature and power is revealed. You'll have to go through the final stages and fight Zero to the death. Not the happiest ending, but that's what you get for having such terrible luck, loser.
Rats!
Interestingly, the bad ending has some pretty massive implications for the Mega Man universe as a whole. X on the verge of death is fixed up by Dr. Light's cyber elf, don't ask, and his memory of Zero is wiped from his mind. X then goes on a journey to create a utopia for Reploids and humans called Elysium. If you're familiar with the Legend of Zelda branching timeline theory, this is kinda similar. X would go on to create Neo Arcadia, the main setting of the Mega Man Zero games, and much later, this would lead to Elysium's creation, which is a reference to Mega Man Legends. So basically, this ending directly connects the X, Zero, and Legends series together, effectively making the Battle Network and Star Force series the only games not set in the same universe. That's pretty cool. The good endings for X5 are still pretty sad. In both situations, either as Zero or X, you'll fight Sigma, and Zero will sacrifice himself to save X and kill Sigma for good. The slightly better ending includes a scene where Dr. Light's cyber elf repairs X. Don't ask me what a cyber elf is, because that's a topic for a whole different Mega Man Zero inspired video. I mentioned earlier that the development of X6 kinda threw a wrench into the Mega Man lore. Well, the reason for that is that Zero was supposed to be resurrected in Mega Man Zero after firmly establishing that he had been asleep for however much time. But then Capcom wanted to milk the X series a little more, so they resurrected him in X6, contradicting the narrative from Mega Man Zero. They would later retcon this retcon, but that's a whole nother story. Since this was supposed to be the last game, there's plenty of callbacks and Mega Man Easter eggs hidden throughout. Sigma's attacks are a callback to his moves from X1. Sigma's final design, by the way, is so damn lazy. It's a weird 3D render that doesn't move or change. The final fight is against a freaking JPEG. Bonsai Buddy would have been a better final boss design. What, nobody remembers Bonsai Buddy? Okay, how about Clippy? Is that better? Anyways, the final stages, the Zero Space levels, are an obvious callback to Quickman stage levels from Mega Man 2, unfortunately. The Yellow Devil from the original series makes a return, but this time he's the Shadow Devil. And Ragnabagda from X1 even makes a reappearance too. You remember Ragnabagna, right? Even the structure of the game is meant to be reminiscent of the older games. We've grown used to taking on 8 bosses in whatever order we want, but this time around it's 2 sets of 4 bosses, with the latter 4 only being unlockable after you defeat the first 4, just like in the older Mega Man games. Mega Man X5 was the 3rd best-selling game in Japan during its initial release week, and critics gave it mostly good reviews, with the detractors saying it didn't do enough to mix up the formula. I'd have to disagree. I think the time limit and the part collection stuff mixed things up plenty, not to mention the alternate routes. I think they did about as good of a job as they could mixing things up without ruining the core gameplay formula. In conclusion, Mega Man X5 is a fun entry despite baffling choices and a complicated development. This is the game the series should have ended with, and you'll see why in the next couple videos. If you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe for more Mega Man content. Special thanks to David Saperstein, Zen, Curious Curse, Bosick, Chaz Pazenko, and Jilly Mays. You truly are Mega Men and Mega Woman. Thanks for being supporters of the channel, and if you want to be a supporter too, join my Patreon. Thanks for watching, see you all in the Mega Man X6 video.